They called her Subject 17. No name, no family, no voice that anyone listened to. She lived inside a glass cell deep under the alien science facility, cold metal cuffs locked around her wrists and ankles. Bright lights stayed on all the time, and the cameras never blinked. Every morning, the guards passed by, staring at her like she was nothing but failed trash from their old experiments. She was not like them. Her skin shimmered with a soft violet hue, her silver hair hanging, entangled strands around her face. Her eyes, once bright, now stayed down, always on the ground, never meeting the eyes of her captors. She had been beautiful once, strong once, but now she was thin, weak, and forgotten. She had not spoken in months, not even when they poked her. With tools or whispered cruel words from behind the glass, they said she was useless, broken, not worth feeding. She believed them. One day, the lab trembled. The floor shook like thunder was rolling underground, and then a flash of red lights filled the corridors. Sirens screamed from every wall in panic. Spread like fire, the guards grabbed their weapons and ran, shouting codes and orders she couldn't understand. She stayed still, curled in the corner of her cell, arms around her knees, thinking this was just another drill, another nightmare. But this time, something was different. A heavy metal door burst open down the hallway. Smoke poured in, thick and dark, and through it came a figure. Tall, armored, fast. The alien guards fired plasma shots at him, but he moved, like wind dodging, shooting, hitting, without missing a single step. He was not like them, not like the scientists, not like any species she knew. He was human. She had heard of them before creatures from Earth. Wild and unpredictable band. From this part of the galaxy? Myths? Ghost stories? But now, one was standing right in front of her cell, holding a weapon in one hand and scanning her with the other. He saw her. That was the first. Shockey actually looked at her, not like she was garbage, not like she was some experiment, but like she was real. He knelt beside the glass, pressed a hand to the panel, and said something. She didn't understand at first. His accent was strange, but the words came clear. "You're coming with me." She blinked. The glass hissed, then cracked, then shattered. The cuffs on her arms clicked open, falling to the ground with a sharp sound. She didn't move. She thought maybe this was a trap, or maybe she was dreaming, or maybe he'd change his mind like they always did. But he'd not. He reached out his hand. "Can you walk?" Her legs shook as she stood, and for a second she nearly fell, but he caught her, his hands strong but gentle. No one had touched her like that in years. Not with care. She looked at him, really looked at him. His armor was scratched, his eyes sharp and serious, but behind them she saw something she hadn't seen in a long time. Hope another explosion rocked the lab. "We don't have time," he said. Lifted her up, held her like she weighed nothing, and ran. The hallways blurred around her. Sirens screamed, lights blinked, and angry voices shouted orders in alien tongues. The human didn't stop, not once, even when guards tried to block the way. He fought like he had one goal: to get her out. Plasma blasts flew by, one clipped his shoulder, but he kept running. Blood soaked part of his armor, but his grip on her never loosened. He found a vent, kicked it open, and slid down a long shaft into the lower tunnels. These weren't part of the lab. They were old, hidden, maybe even forgotten by the aliens. She wondered how he knew about them. He moved like he had done this before. They reached a door, rusted and covered in wires. He placed a strange cube against the panel, and after a second, it blinked green. The door slid open, revealing a small docking room and a ship. It was a human vessel, sleek and black, half covered in dust, but its engine hummed, ready to go. He set her down gently. "Breathing hard. You made it," he said, almost surprised. "You're safe now." She looked at him, still not sure what to say. Her throat felt tight, her voice buried too deep to find, but she nodded. She believed him. For the first time in her life, she believed someone, and that changed everything. The stars outside the ship were silent, endless, cold, but inside the small vessel, everything felt warm, almost alive. She sat in the corner of the control room, her knees pulled close to her chest, eyes wide as she tried to understand what had just happened. The human pilot moved around quickly, pressing buttons, flipping switches, guiding the ship out of the alien zone. His armor was scratched, blood still marked his sleeve, but he didn't seem to care. He had a mission, and she was part of it now. She thought he might ignore her now that she was out of the lab. Maybe he only needed her for some plan. Maybe he'd drop her off at some space station and vanish like a shadow. She wouldn't blame him. No one had ever stayed near her for long. She was used to being forgotten. But then he surprised her again. He turned, knelt in front of her, and spoke. In a calm, low voice, "You're hungry, aren't you?" She blinked, unsure how to answer. She was starving, but she didn't expect him to care. He opened a storage panel and pulled out a sealed pack. He tossed it to her gently, like handing food to someone, not throwing scraps to a creature. It landed in her lap, still warm. The smell made her mouth water, but she hesitated. He watched her for a moment, then said, "It's safe. I don't poison people I rescue." The corner of his mouth lifted. Was that a joke? She unwrapped it slowly, took a bite. The taste was simple, but rich. She ate without looking up, almost afraid it would be taken away. But he stayed quiet, just sitting across from her, not staring, not judging.
"What's your name?" he asked. She stopped chewing. A name? She hadn't heard that
question in so long it felt foreign. She barely remembered the name her mother once whispered to her before the lab took everything away. I don't remember, she said softly, voice like a wind through a crack. "That's okay," he nodded. "You'll remember when you're ready?" He stood up, moved to the front console, and sat back down in the pilot seat. For a while, they traveled in silence. The stars outside blurred, light trailing across the window as the ship jumped to high-speed flight. Then he said something strange. "I've seen people like you before." Her eyes snapped toward him. "Not exactly like you," he continued, "but people the galaxy threw away. Experiments, slaves, outcasts, or just forgotten souls. I don't walk past them. Not anymore." She didn't understand why someone would choose to help the weak. No one helped her. The galaxy was cruel to those who couldn't fight back. "Why? Me?" she asked. He didn't answer right away. He leaned back, resting one arm on the chair, watching the stars. "Because they treated you like nothing," he said, "and that means you're something." His words struck like a slow bolt of lightning. She didn't know what they meant exactly, but her chest felt heavy in a strange wail, like something long asleep had started to stir. "Back there," he added. "You could have screamed, fought, begged, but you didn't. You sat still, quiet, like you'd already accepted it. That's not weakness, that's survival." He looked over his shoulder at her, eyes sharp but kind. "I respect that." She didn't know what to say, so she said nothing. He stood again, opened another compartment, and pulled out a small blanket. He tossed it toward her. "You need rest. Sleep anywhere you like." She held the blanket close, unsure if she should. Lie down, sit up, or even trust her tired body to relax. "I'll be at the controls," he said as he returned to the pilot seat. "We're safe for now." Safe. The word echoed in her mind. For now was enough. She curled up near the wall, the blanket soft against her skin. The floor of the ship felt warmer than any bed she'd known. Her body ached, her eyes heavy, but her thoughts refused to quiet. Who was this man? Why did he speak to her like she mattered? And why did part of her believe him? Before sleep took her, she looked up one more time. The human was staring out at the stars again, one hand steady on the control wheel. She didn't know his name either, but somehow she trusted him, and deep inside her, something small, something fragile began to grow. Not fear, not pain, but hope. She woke to the sound of silence. Not alarms, not screaming guards, not the electric buzz of her old prison, but real silence, thick and calm. For a moment, she thought she was dreaming. Then she opened her eyes and remembered she was no longer in chains, no longer behind glass. She was on a ship, flying through stars, with a human who didn't see her as an object. Her fingers gripped the blanket tightly as she sat up. He was still at the controls, his back to her, focused on the blinking lights. He hadn't left. Outside, the stars slid across the window, stretched thin like threads of silver. But something had changed. The ship had slowed down. She could feel the shift in the air. "Are we stopping?" she asked, her voice rough but stronger than before. He turned, his face serious. We were followed. Her heart jumped. He tapped a screen and a radar blink, tread dots moving closer. Scouts, small alien crafts. They must have tracked my signal before we jumped. They're trying to cut us off. She stood quickly, the blanket falling to the floor. "What do we do?" The human smiled faintly, not with joy but with calm fire. "We run." He pressed a button, and the ship dove hard to the left. Her body tilted with the motion, nearly throwing her down, but she caught the edge of a seat and held tight. The stars spun, the engines roared, and the ship became a bullet through the dark. But the enemy was fast. Behind them, laser beams lit up space sharp, glowing trails that missed by inches. The alien scouts were sleek and deadly, their weapons charged for kill shots. One beam hit their rear shield. The lights flickered and smoke burst from the left side of the ship. "We're hit," he said. "Not bad, but they'll keep coming." She could barely hear him over the alarms. Her heart pounded, not from fear but something else. She looked around, eyes wide, brain racing. "What can I do? You want to help?" "Yes." He pointed to the second console. "Sit there. Hold the stabilizer lever when I say." She rushed over, sat, grabbed the cold metal handle. Not. Yet he said, "Wait now." She pulled it back. The ship tilted upward just as another laser missed them by a hair. "You've got quick hands," he said. She didn't smile, but something flickered in her chest, something new, something proud. They flew through an asteroid field next. The human twisted the ship left and right, sliding between spinning rocks. The alien scouts followed, but not all of them made it. One crashed into a floating chunk of iron, exploding in a silent fireball. "We're almost through," he shouted. Another blast shook the ship. She lost her grip, fell, rolled across the floor. He was beside her in seconds, pulling her up, checking her foreburns. "Are you hurt?" "No," she said, breathless. "I'm okay." His eyes locked onto hers. "Good." He guided her back to the seat, handed her a small oxygen strip, and pointed ahead. One more push. The ship dove again, straight into a narrow canyon, carved into a drifting moon. The aliens didn't slow down. They were desperate now, hungry for blood. But the human was faster, smarter. They reached the other side of the canyon, where a thick field of magnetic storms waited. The human flipped a switch. "What's that?" she asked. He smirked. "Cover." The ship disappeared into the storm cloud. Lightning crashed around them. Alien crafts hesitated at the edge, then turned back. Afraid of what was inside, she watched the radar go blank. No red dots. No danger. She couldn't believe it. They had escaped. The engines slowed. The lights returned to normal. And the alarm finally stopped screaming. She looked at him, her body shaking, her skin damp with sweat. "You saved us." We laughed quietly, leaning back in his chair. "You helped. Not just a survivor, not your part of the crew. Part of the crew." The words hit her harder than the escape. No one had ever told her that she belonged anywhere. No one had ever given her a role, a task, a purpose. She wasn't just a rescued girl anymore. She was something more. She stared at her hands, still shaking. "I didn't know I could do that," she whispered. "Now you do," he replied. She looked out the window. The storm still raged behind them, but they were past it now, flying toward the unknown. And for the first time in her life, the unknown didn't feel like death. It felt like freedom. The ship drifted into silence, hidden between two collapsing moons, far beyond any radar reach. The engines hummed low now, barely a whisper. Every system had cooled. Every alarm light had gone dark. The human called it the Hollow, an ancient mining field swallowed by forgotten gravity and frozen dust. No one came here. That made it perfect. She stood near the window, wrapped in a clean blanket, her eyes tracing the slow dance of broken planets outside. Chunks of rock glowed with crystal veins, old mining stations floated like dead bones, and strange light waves moved through the black like underwater creatures. The human stepped beside her, handing her a small, round fruit from a storage crate. It was sweet, purple-skinned and soft. She took it slowly, careful not to waste a single drop. "You picked this place for a reason," she said, voice soft but steady. He nodded. "Used it once before when I was hunted by bounty lords from the Scar Belt. They couldn't follow me in. Same silence, same safety." She looked at him, still unsure of what to call him. "You never told me your name." He turned, resting against the wall with a tired smile. "Rhett. Captain Rhett Varen, Earthborn, ex-Marine, current pain in the galaxy's side." She repeated the name under her breath, slow and quiet. Rhett. It was strong, simple human. He tilted his head. "What about you?" She hesitated. "I don't have one anymore." "You sure about that?" he asked, pointing toward a small storage panel. "Open that." She walked over, tapped the screen. The panel slid open, revealing something unexpected. An old mirror, scratched and cloudy, but whole. She stared at herself. For a moment, she didn't breathe. She saw the scars on her neck, the pale marks from chains, the faint bruises still fading across her arms. Her silver hair fell loose around her shoulders. Her skin glowed soft purple under the ship's lights. But her eyes, those had changed. They weren't empty anymore. She stepped closer, touched the glass. "I don't know who this is." It crossed his arms, watching her. "That's someone who survived." She turned to him. He added, "That's someone who still has a future." She lowered her hand from the mirror. "Then maybe I need a name for her." "Take your time," he said. "Names aren't just sounds, they're promises." They stood there a while, silence wrapping around them like a second blanket. Outside, a distant star blinked through the window, lighting the dark edges of space. Later, he showed her the rest of the ship. Not much, just 2 decks. One for flying, one for surviving. The food station was small, but clean. The medical unit held supplies she barely understood, and the sleeping quarters had 2 beds, one already claimed by a mess of blankets, the other untouched. "You can take whichever," Rhett said, pointing. "Or both. Doesn't matter." She stepped into the empty room, her fingers brushing the walls. It felt strange, standing in a place with no cameras, no chains, no watchers. This room didn't judge her. It just waited. She sat on the edge of the bed, feeling the softness beneath her. For a long time, she didn't speak. Then her voice broke the silence. "You could have left me." Rhett leaned in the doorway. "I didn't want to." "Didn't know me. I didn't need to." She looked up. "Why?" He didn't hesitate. "Because I've been left behind too." The room went quiet again, but this time the silence felt different, not empty, but shared. "I was part of a unit once," he said, stepping further into the room. "We were sent to rescue colonists on a burning moon. But someone pulled the mission, left us behind to die. Most of my team didn't make it." She watched him closely, seeing pain flash through his calm eyes. "I crawled out of that hell alone," he said, "and I swore if I ever saw someone abandoned like that, Agena wouldn't be the one walking away." She stood slowly, her bare feet touching the floor like it was sacred ground. "I don't know what I'm supposed to be now," she whispered. Rhett looked at her like she was already something more than she believed. "You're free."
That's
"A start." She nodded, holding on to that word, free. Not lost, not broken. Free. And somewhere deep inside her chest, a quiet fire lit for the first time. The storm found them while they were sleeping. Rhett was in the pilot's chair, half dozing with a weapon across his lap. She was curled up in the far bunk, wrapped in warmth, her first real sleep in what felt like years. The silence around the ship cracked when a warning siren blinked, red across the control screen. She opened her eyes instantly. Rhett was already on his feet, scanning the radar. His face turned grim. "What is it?" she asked, heart suddenly racing. He didn't answer right away. His eyes followed the red dots swarming into view. They found us. She rushed to his side, the cold floor biting at her feet. On the screen were 6 ships. Fast, sharp, small vessels designed for one thing: capture and return. The kind her old masters used. They put a bounty on me, Rhett said, pressing keys fast, voice hard. And they're offering triple if I'm dead. Her hand shook. But not from fear? Not exactly. You should have left me behind. He looked at her, no kindness in his expression now, just fire. Don't say that. Not after what you've survived. She stared at the blinking screen, her breath shallow, her fingers gripping the console. They're not here for you, she whispered. He turned. Doesn't matter. She wasn't used to that kind of answer. The lights flickered. Outside shadows moved between the stars. The enemy ships spread out, circling. Rhett guided their vessel downward, hiding behind a floating mining station, powering off the main engines to stay invisible. I've got one emergency jump left, he said, but it needs 10 minutes to charge. Till then we hide. She nodded, but her body stayed tense. Then something unexpected happened. A voice came through the ship's comms. Cracked, metallic, cold. This is Enforcer Drek of the Varnax laboratory. Return Subject 17, and you may live. You have 60 seconds. Her legs nearly gave out. That name, Subject 17, it made her stomach twist. She hadn't heard it since the last time they shocked her for speaking too loud. Rhett's hand hovered over the comms reply switch. But before he pressed it, he looked at her. You want me to answer? He asked. She didn't respond. Not yet. She stepped forward instead. Her voice was quiet. Let me. He paused. You sure? Shh. She nodded, jaw clenched, breath shaky. He stepped aside. She pressed the comms button. Her voice went into space. This is not Subject 17 anymore. Silence, then came laughter from the other side. That voice, the alien commander hissed, so weak. Still pretending to be more than a lab mistake? She didn't flinch. I'm not pretending, she said. I was nothing because you made me nothing, but now I know who I am, the enemy replied with a snarl. You are a stolen property, or a broken design. You are coming back in chains. She pressed the button again, voice sharper than steel. If you think I'm going back, come try. The transmission ended. Rhett stood next to her, silent at first. Then he said something she didn't expect. Good. That's your voice, not theirs. The radar blinked again. They're coming in fast, he said, hands moving back to the controls. Then we don't run, she said. He blinked. We fight? We stall them, she corrected, until the jump is ready. You focus on flying? I'll handle the rest. He handed her a pulse rifle. Without a word, she didn't hesitate. They split up. He locked the pilot room. She moved to the rear cargo bay, where a backup airlock could be opened manually. The ship shook. One of the enemy vessels had latched on. She stood in front of the door, breathing steady, rifle in her hands. Her heart beat like thunder. But her grip stayed firm. The airlock hissed open. 2 armored soldiers stepped in. Weapons raised. She moved first. Her body reacted like it remembered something older than fear. She slid under one shot, fired once. Twice, one enemy down, the other lunged. She didn't run. She twisted. Used the weight of her small frame to throw him off balance. Slammed the rifle into his chest, then fired. Smoke filled the room. Rhett's voice came through her earpiece. Jump core ready. Get back up here. She ran. Back through the halls, past wires, flickering lights, the smell of fire. She reached the pilot chair. Strap beside him. Strap in, he said. She clicked into place. He hit the jump. The stars stretched, then tore. They vanished into light. They landed on a moon made of stone and silence. No cities, no towers, no voices, just old ruins carved into canyons. Shadows crawling through rock, and winds that whispered across the cliffs like forgotten spirits. Rhett chose this place for one reason: no one would find them here. Not right away. It gave them time to prepare. The ship had taken damage. Its left wing was scorched, the rear shield's nearly gone. Rhett worked fast, sweat dripping from his face as he replaced cracked wires and patched holes with whatever he had left. But he wasn't alone. She was helping, not watching, not waiting, not hiding. Helping, she carried tools, learned systems, cleaned wounds, and asked questions. Her hands were no longer trembling, her voice no longer small. She moved like someone, waking from a long sleep, confused at first, then aware, then ready. That night, they sat under the open sky, stars glowing above them like a sea of fireflies. Rhett set up a small training circle using spare parts, a stack of rocks, a target dummy, a pulse knife. He tossed her a knife. Catch, she caught it. He smiled. Good time to show me what you've got. She stepped into the circle, her bare feet brushing the dust. Rhett circled her slowly. You were fast back in the cargo bay, he said, but you hesitated. You need to stop thinking like prey. She nodded. He charged. She blocked the first swing, ducked the second, moved. Left, then struck. Her blade sliced through air, missing by a breath, but he smiled anyway. Faster. She came at him again, quicker this time. They trained for hours. When her arms grew heavy, he pushed harder. When she collapsed, he offered a hand and pulled her up. Again and again. You're stronger than you think, he said, but you've got to stop carrying their chains in your mind. She looked at him, breathing hard. I don't want to be what they made me. Then stop running from it, he said, and turn it into your weapon. That night, she lay beneath the stars, staring upward, whispering the name she had chosen for herself. Not Subject 17, not prisoner, but Lyra in the morning. The message came. A drone dropped from orbit, hovering above their ship like a vulture. Rhett shot it down, but not before it finished broadcasting. It wasn't a threat. It was a challenge. A live call. From the one who built her cage. The alien called Drek appeared on screen, smug and sharp, his voice full of poison. You can run. To the edge of the galaxy, hybrid, it doesn't matter. I made you. I own you. Lyra stepped forward. I'm not yours. The alien sneered. You're a mistake I intend to erase. You can try. He leaned in. Then I'll see you soon. The screen went dark. Rhett looked at her, voice calm. We can run again. Lyra shook her head. No, we ended here. Rhett didn't argue. He nodded once, like he'd been waiting. For her to say it, they prepared. Traps, positions, escape routes, backup power. When the alien forces landed, they came with arrogance, expecting fear. What they found instead was fire. Lyra met them in the canyon, her pulse blade glowing bright. Blue in the dusk. She moved like a shadow, silent, fast, deadly. The first squad fell before they knew what hit them. One soldier raised his rifle. She twisted behind him, knocked it aside, slammed the blade through his chest, then turned to the next above her. Rhett provided cover, picking off enemies from the cliffs, every shot sharp and final. The aliens fought hard, but not smart. They expected a broken girl. They found a warrior at the heart of the canyon. Lyra came face to face with Drek. He stood tall in polished armor. Cruel eyes glowing green, voice full of contempt. You could have lived like a pet, he growled. I'd rather die as myself. He struck first. She blocked, countered, spun. His strength was brutal, but her speed carved through it like wind through fire. Every swing of her blade had purpose. Every step brought her closer. She didn't fight to escape. She fought to end it. His armor cracked. His balance broke. His words stopped. And with one final move, Lyra drove her blade through the center of his chest, locking eyes with him as he fell. You don't own me anymore. He hit the ground. The canyon fell silent. The others ran. Rhett climbed down slowly, his rifle still in hand. He looked at her, standing in the red dust, the sun set behind her. The pulse blade humming softly. She turned to him, breathing heavy, face calm. I'm not what they said I was. He nodded. Oh, you're not. They'll think they'll come. Again, probably. She picked up another weapon from the ground. then let them. The stars above the canyon were brighter than before. Smoke still drifted through the broken rocks, and wreckage from enemy ships lay scattered across the sand. Alien bodies were already cold, their weapons quiet. The wind carried no screams now. Only the sound of something ending and something beginning. Lyra stood alone at the edge of the cliff, watching the sky. The ship was almost ready. Rhett was below, fixing the last damage, sealing the hole, running systems checks. He moved with energy, with purpose. But his eyes still glanced up toward her now and then. She was different now. Not just stronger, sharper. Her steps were firm. Her shoulders no longer low. Her eyes weren't searching for permission. She had carved her name into the dirt with fire and steel, and no one could take it from her now. She spoke her name out loud again, steady and sure. Lyra, not a code, not a file name, not a cage just. Her. The transmission came just as the engines powered. Up. This time. It wasn't a threat. It was a message from a far-off station one Rhett hadn't expected. A border world colony, struggling with disease, famine, and pirate attacks.
Oh.
They had sent out a call for help weeks ago, but no one answered. No fleet, no diplomat, no hero, just silence. Now the signal reached them, bouncing off satellites. Half-broken and full of static. Read it twice before playing it aloud. A young alien girl's voice came through. If anyone hears this, we're still alive, please. Help us. We have nothing left. The ship cabin went quiet. Lyra listened to the voice. She didn't move for a moment, just stood still, letting the sound wash over her. Then she looked at Rhett. We're going, aren't we? He didn't answer. Didn't need to. She stepped into the ship, sat beside him in the co-pilot seat, and pulled the straps tight. She had been saved once, by a stranger who gave her a chance instead of a chain. Now it was her turn. The engines roared to life. The ship lifted, rose through the dusty sky, and broke into the stars like a blade through silk. On the journey, Rhett spoke little. He just worked the controls, calculated paths, adjusted shields. But his glance kept returning to her, this girl who had once curled up in the corner of his ship, silent and shaking, now sitting upright beside him, eyes locked on the stars. You've changed, he said quietly. She looked at him. I just remembered who I was meant to be. He smiled at that. Do you want to tell them your name when we land? He asked. She nodded. Yes, Lyra. She shook her head slowly. That was the name I gave myself to survive, she said. But now I want a name that means something more. She stared out the window, watching the glow of the colony star grow closer. I want to choose a name. That isn't about the pain or the chains, she added, voice calm and proud. I want one that comes from hope. Rhett gave a small laugh. Got anything in mind? She smiled, the kind of smile that had weight behind it. I'll tell them when I get there. When they arrived, the colony was worse than they expected. Craters burned around the outskirts, buildings collapsed, and the sick gathered under metal shelters, barely breathing. The guards were gone, the council dead. The survivors were mostly women and children, and they were terrified when they saw the ship. They expected another enemy. But the moment Lyra stepped out, weapons down, hands open, face calmed, the fear changed to confusion and hope. She walked slowly through the camp, stopping beside the youngest girl and kneeling down to her level. I'm here to help, she said. The girl stared at Hurt, the soft violet skin, the silver hair, the strange beauty of a creature who didn't look like them but somehow felt safer than anyone who ever had. What's your name? The girl asked. Lyra stood up slowly. She looked around at all the faces hungry. Weak, forgotten, and made her choice. My name is Solari, my new name, born from the stars. A promise of light after darkness. Rhett stood behind her, silent, proud, and as Solari took her first steps into the broken colony, the people began to follow, not because she was powerful, not because she was famous, but because she carried something none of them had left. Hope.